85.23 million. That's pretty impressive. Raiders, today we're going to talk about one of my favorite champions in the entire game, Fahrakin the Fat, or specifically his place in the Bat-Eater comp, or as I call it, the Fat Eater comp. He fills the DPS slot, but what he really does is changes the way that you build all the rest of your champions. So if you're finding it difficult to hit the speeds, the crit rate, the crit damage, and put on the different types of gear that would make it possible for you to one key Ultimate Nightmare, Fahrakin the Fat could be the key. So let's talk about Fahrakin the Fat's skills. Why is he so good? How does he help you make the Bat-Eater comp so much more accessible, so much easier to hit the numbers on? For starters, he puts the decreased defense out there. He only does it about 50% of the time, but he's in Relentless, and he's got those not lasting gifts, but Master Hexer, the one that's gonna make this stay on longer when he puts it down. So he's putting it down for multiple turns, and he's getting at least 2 turns for every turn the clan boss gets. So he's pretty much going to have defense down on the entire fight. He doesn't have weaken, so that's I guess the one weakness to his kit, but he makes up for it in so many other ways. Next, he's got HP burn and poisons. He's putting him on for 2 turns, more with Master Hexer, and these poisons really do build up throughout the match. You end up with 4 on there at a time, 5 sometimes. So that's really impressive, and he pretty much keeps the clan boss burned the whole time or close to it. So as we know, those do, of course, a ton of damage. His passive only comes into play if you're not doing the Bat-Eater comp, because if you are, it's unkillable. It doesn't matter. But if you're doing any other 2-for-1 team, I wouldn't use him in anything other than 2-for-1. But if you're doing it in any other 2-for-1 team, he deflects 20% of his incoming damage to his teammates. So you're going to want to take that into consideration. You can make him a little weaker, or you can make them a little stronger, but you would want to make up for that so that they all die at the same time. That's usually the goal. And then his crowning skill, Beat Down. This is what makes it possible to run the Bat-Eater comp in a different way, to run it the Fat Eater way, to run it where everybody else uses less crit rate than 100%, and it doesn't matter. He puts a 30% increased crit rate buff and a 30% increased crit damage buff up for 3 turns. Not 2 turns, but 3 turns every 4 turns. On top of that, he brings in all of his allies to fight with him, does an ally attack. I shouldn't say with him, he doesn't attack, but he sends them all into attack. So they're getting extra turns like every 2 turns that the clan boss takes. So that's really, really cool. And he actually does it a little more often because of Relentless, because he's wearing a Relentless set. So we've got the increased crit damage. So everybody's hitting harder. If they've got 220 crit damage, they're hitting for 250 crit damage instead. That's huge. That makes up for a myriad of sins. And then that increased crit rate is going to be up almost the entire time. It's practically the entire time. So if you're running somebody at 70% crit rate, that's a 30% chance they're not going to crit. That's a problem. He puts this on, he's got it on almost the entire time, so that they're critting like they have 100% crit rate. But what about those rare times where they're not? Because of the fact that it's happening so rarely, they still have a better than 50% chance of critting. You're really not going to notice it much. You're not going to probably notice it at all because it happens so rarely. Maybe 5 of their attacks don't crit. Oh well, they're also attacking extra times about every 2 turns that the clan boss takes. So that's just a massive amount of extra damage. Plus they get that increased crit damage. So it more than makes up for the rare occasion that they don't crit. But now here's the best part. When you go to your man-eaters, this one I've got in mostly speed, along with a broken set here. I do have a counterattack banner on them. That's only going to hit about 5% of the time. Eventually, I want that entire bottom row to be counterattack. That would help beef things up. But he's doing just fine because this is the fast guy. He is at 267 speed. That's not an easy number to reach, especially if you have to do 100% crit rate. In his case, I've got him at 81% crit rate, and I've got him at 217 crit damage. That 217 is actually going to be 247 most of the fight. But once in a while, it's not. But for the most part, it's going to be in that 247 range, and most of the time he's going to be at over 100% crit rate. The other man eater, um, and here's the coolest part: it's not just the stats on him, but I was able to put him in different gear as well. So I've got him at 3,421 attack. I've got him at 240 speed. I think that's pretty close to the bottom he can be. I've got him at 74% crit rate, and then I've got him at 220% crit damage. And of course, that's going to be more like 250 most of the time. But here's the best part: I was able to put him in Cruel and Fury. And what Fury is going to do is the lower his hit points are, the better his damage is going to be. So being able to put him in this set and being able to put him in the Cruel set, as you're going to see at the end, actually increases his damage above the other one pretty substantially. And again, I've got the counterattack accessories. Always do that when you can in Clan Boss. The more hits you do, the more damage you can do. Now, another great thing is I was able to put Painkeeper in a poison set. So even though Painkeeper's only at 75% crit rate again, and 172% crit damage. She's not a huge damage dealer. She never does that great in that department. However, if you put her in poison, she'll actually do quite a bit more damage that way. And then lastly, we've got Seeker. Seeker's in a broken set. I was able to put a little bit of Cruel on him. He doesn't have any of the counterattack accessories right now. Um, and then again, I was able to get more attack, more crit damage because I only ran and get the 250 speed. And again, I was able to get more attack, more crit damage, and get to the 250 speed and the to get that cruel set on because I was able to go 85% on the crit rate. Um, so that's really the beauty of Fahrakin the Fat. Get yourself as much damage as you can to make up for those really rare occasions where you're not going to crit. But it's like let's pretend you've got it down to about 15% of the time or 10% of the time you don't have 100% crit rate. Now you still only have a 1 in 10% chance on those turns to not crit. So how often is that going to actually happen in a match? Now, does that extra 30% crit damage make up for that? Probably. Over the course of a match, over a course of these long runs, it probably does. I think the issue some people do is they tried to just put the regular masteries and everything on Fahrakin the Fat. Now, what usually scares people away from using Fahrakin the Fat? I think it's the chance to not crit. And they think, oh, this puts too much RNG. I've found that there's pretty much no RNG at all as long as you're not going up against blue affinity. Now, his weakness is blue affinity. He's not going to be putting down the decreased defense, so the whole team is going to be, missing that decreased defense for quite a bit of the fight. Because of that, we quite often miss, just barely will miss that one key. Usually I'll get like 69 million and just be cursing. Usually I get between like 75 and 85 million when I'm running against any other affinity. His best affinity is green. And that's not because he has an advantage against it, it's because Seeker does, and Seeker hits harder. He also does well against red, and of course, he does great against void as well. Now, if I do lose to the blue clan boss, then I just run an extra key. Maybe I miss brutal that day, or maybe I use all 4 keys instead. Either way is okay with me. So I don't think it's a big deal. Once a month, twice a month, I have to run an extra key. It's not a big deal. Now, the first month or so when I first created this comp, I was really close to the 1 key, and I just had to keep pumping up the damage and working on it until I got there. But I think that's going to be the case with any of these champions that you pick. The earlier you are in the game, the harder it gets. Now, I do think you're going to get there a lot faster with Fahrakin the Fat because of the way that you get to build the rest of the team. So if you're earlier in the game and you're trying to decide on who's going to be your damage dealer, other than probably Draco, who's just completely busted in OP, I think this guy's going to be the way to go. Um, End game, you might be able to find a team that you can punch higher numbers with. There are some other champions out there that can do it. But I think the earlier you are, the harder it is to get that full crit rate, full crit damage, full attack on champions, and get that extra gear on that helps you get that 1 key. That's really the hard part is hitting those right speeds and still doing enough damage. I do know people in my own clan that have the right champs, but they aren't able to hit the speed tune yet. So Farrakhan the Fat's going to help you hit that speed tune and help you get it done. Okay, I hop back in because I forgot to talk about the masteries. So on Painkeeper, we actually went a little different than the Man-Eaters and Seeker. We went down the support tree, and the reason we did that instead of doing the defense tree is because you don't want to use the counterattacks for her. Her A1 increases turn meter, so it's okay to still use her as long as you don't use those counterattacks. Other than that, you just do the standard just straight down to getting the War Master, and you can just skip the Vampiric one because she doesn't do the counterattack anyway, so it doesn't matter. And then on the support side, we're going to go down to Master Hexer and also Sniper. Sniper will work with artifacts, so that's going to help her place the poisons more often. And then don't forget, we don't want to use any turn meter masteries on any of these champions. So make sure that you skip Arcane Celerity and you skip Rapid Response on all of them. And don't do any of the speed increasing ones either. Like make sure you skip Whirlwind of Death. So um, don't forget those are big no-nos. They're going to throw your speed tune off. Um, if you come back and you're like, hey, the speed tune's not working, that's probably why. Now, I skipped Lure of Steel on all of these champions. It makes it easier to predict whether or not you have a certain exact speed if you're not using it. However, you probably want to use this to try to reach the numbers that you need to reach. It should be fine in most cases, but once in a while it can throw things off. I skipped it because I didn't need it, but if you need it, go ahead, use it. It could help you out a lot. So with both the Man-Eaters and Seeker, we're going to use the defense tree. And the whole point of this one is to go down to the counterattack masteries. So Retribution and Deterrence. Although I don't think Deterrence works on this mode anyway. So really it's just Retribution. What's going to happen is you're going to use this life drinker to bring your health back up above the 25% mark. And then you're going to get hit by the clan boss. And then hopefully that will proc a counterattack based on retribution, where it has a 50% chance to counterattack when this champion loses 25% of their max HP or more from a single enemy skill. So we're just trying to proc that over and over again. It just extra hits means extra damage. And then once again for Fahrakin the Fat, we're just doing the same thing Painkeeper had on the offense tree again. We don't need the Vampiric one because he's not doing counterattacks. And then on the support tree, we're going to actually take anything we can just to give us some extra accuracy on the way down to Lasting Gifts. Lasting Gifts proves to be really helpful. And then also we go down to Master Hexer. Again, we have to avoid certain things. We have to avoid the Arcane Celerity. We have to avoid Rapid Response. And then we also have to avoid the speed increase from Whirlwind of Death. So make sure we don't take any speed, any turn meter anywhere. That's just going to throw the comp off. Okay, and lastly, I went on to Ayumi Love. It's a great resource for Raid Shadow Legends. And here's the champion speeds for the Bat-Eater strategy. Everything is the same in the Bat-Eater comp, except for the fact that I'm using Fahrakin the Fat as my DPS. You'll see Fane listed here as the DPS. But you can see like the fast Man-Eater needs to be between 265 and 275. Then you've got 248 to 254 for Seeker. 239 to 247 for Slow Maneater, 239 to 247 for Painkeeper. They can't be the same speeds. And then 218 to 227 for your DPS. Um, the one thing I would note, if you're really high, like on your fast Maneater, then being really slow on your other Maneater might not work out, or on the Seeker. So generally speaking, if you're kind of on the lower range, it seems to work out better if you're on the lower range with the other champions as well. But you can play around with it and definitely use Deadwood Jedi's calculator. That would help you out a lot to make sure you've got it right before you go live. But if you follow these speeds and then you also follow what I put in as the presets, then you should be just fine. All right, so today I'm going to show you first Here I am. So I did 74 million today on Ultra Nightmare. Go over to Nightmare and oh, there we are, 85 million on Nightmare. Now these were both on Red Affinity. Red Affinity seems to be very close to Void Affinity for me. Now I haven't run Brutal yet today. I'm going to use that key on Ultra Nightmare again so I can show you guys the run. Now on Brutal on green, I've hit as high as 100 million. But with like red or Void Affinity, it's usually something between 85 and 95 million. So let's log into Ultra Nightmare here. All right, so here we are in the clan boss. So this is just an example of how it plays out. He's going to be putting down the burn and the poison right away. I think he got 3%ed on one of the poisons. Not a big deal. You've got everybody doing their normal thing, and here he goes, brings in the ally attack, so they all get an extra attack. Um, so they're just slamming away. But on top of that, he put that increased crit rate and the increased crit damage down. Some of them because of lasting gifts for more than 3 turns. So Seeker, it's going to go off of a little quicker because he takes extra turns to make the Bat-Eater work. But everybody else, it's going to be staying up until he's putting it back on again, pretty much. Um, and then also, one thing I hadn't mentioned earlier, but Painkeeper, of course, lowers the cooldowns of everything. So his 4 turns is actually more like 3 turns for that skill. Um, so here he is again, put everything on everybody again. So he's just pretty much keeping it up almost the entire time. Once in a while, Seeker doesn't have it up for a turn. Um, and then I believe when it fades off of anybody else, that's when he puts it back on. So let's keep an eye out for that. Painkeeper's going to lose hers soon. Yep, so she used it up. That Maneater keeps it on. Yep, he put it back on again. So there it is. He pretty much keeps it on the entire match. And then on top of that, look at all the poisons he's got up there. He's got 5 poisons right now. He's got the HP burn up for 3 turns. And those poisons, some of them are at 2 and 3 ticks. That's how it builds up. He gets that lasting gifts going. So, um, again, the only one that really, if you wanted to max this out, you would take, and I guess I just hadn't even realized this, but if you really wanted to max it out, you could play around with Seeker, putting him in a 100% crit rate. But again, I think the extra crit damage, being able to put him in the Cruel set, being able to get a counterattack amulet on him, or banner, whatever it was, I think those all make up for the rare occasion that he doesn't crit. Um, so he's going to be doing his thing, and yeah, oh, and by the way, he's weak hitting against Red Affinity. So that's his weakness here. We're still going to do plenty of damage because Fahrakin the Fat is not weak to Red Affinity. In fact, he's strong. Because it plays out more where the Blue Affinity really knocks him back a peg. So you do want to avoid Blue Affinity when you can. But really what you want to do is just run it twice. That's what I do. That's what everybody should do. So what I'm going to do is probably cut away after a while, cut back in towards the end, so that you can see the end of the fight. But I don't want to just sit here talking for literally another 40 turns. That wouldn't be very fun. Um, but you do get to see kind of how it all plays out. And then at the end, I'll be able to show you the damage that each champ did. You'll be able to see how much more damage our Fury Maneater does than the one that is not in the Fury set. So being able to put him in that set, and who knows, you might be able to get your fast Maneater in a Fury set or in a Poison set or something like that. But to be honest, put Painkeeper in the Poison. Right now, Fahrakin's got 6 poisons up. If you had 2 people in poison sets, you might actually start missing that decrease down or whatever. And that's the other one to keep an eye out for. There he did. He put it on for 3 turns again. He's pretty much going to have that decrease down on the whole fight too. Once in a while, it's not on there, but it's on there pretty much the whole time. You have to get really unlucky for it not to, unless of course it's Blue Affinity where he's weak hitting a lot. So I will pull away, and then we'll pull back in at the end of the fight. Okay, so we're back here. We're at 41 turns, and we're already about to hit the 70 million threshold, which is right around what you need to do a 1 key. So We're there at 41 turns. So we're going to do quite a bit more than we did earlier today. The biggest difference that I did was I actually changed it to that lasting gifts um, in the masteries instead of doing the one that increased your chance to land something by 5%. I was doing that for the sake of the decreased defense, so that I'd have more than a 50% chance to land it. Um, but yeah, hadn't really realized that I didn't have lasting gifts. I really thought I did. So I thought, let's run it and see what happens. And at least for this run, it actually did more damage. So we'll see if that, long term is the better move. But in either case, obviously, at least against Red Affinity here, we're in no trouble whatsoever of not doing much more than the required for a one key. But here we are already at 76 million on turn count 44. You will notice just how long each turn takes, because not only is everybody going twice, but then when Fahrakin the Fat attacks, once every once every two of the clan bosses turns, everybody's going in for an extra attack. So we are going to be pushing that 20-minute mark somewhere around there per run. That's on my computer. It actually goes a little slower on my phone, sadly, because of the fact that it kind of slows down once the screensaver mode goes on. These are all things that Plarium should figure out how to fix. Maybe give us a 3 times or a 4 times rate of speed in Clan Boss, just something to help speed things up. But as you can see, the debuff bar is always pretty full. Um, he's pretty much always got that crit rate and crit damage up. We've hit the 80 million mark. Um, there aren't a lot of champions that can easily do that. I don't know if you ever would have thought that we'd be doing over 80 million on Ultra Nightmare with without anybody being at 100% crit rate except Fahrakin the Fat. So I think that by itself is probably the kind of the crowning jewel of this whole thing. It's just how easy you can get everybody to these levels and get them into the better gear. And you're either going to be at or very close to a one key just by setting it up. And then, you just increase that damage a little bit. You get a better ring, um, you get a better chest piece, something like that, and then boom, you're there in no time. So, um, yeah, I think this lasting gifts was definitely the right move. We're gonna do 84 million, maybe 85, and so about 10 million better than doing it the other way. So I'm glad I figured that out. That was kind of cool. All right, here we are. Let's take a look at the damage. Painkeeper did 11.7. Seeker did 12.9. Now, the only reason Painkeeper did as well as she did was the fact that she's in that poison set. So, and we were only able to put her in the poison set because it was easier to get her to the speeds since we didn't have to have as much crit rate on her. Seeker, in fact, with Painkeeper, I think I would go speed poison set over 100% crit rate, in my opinion. And of course, everybody's in War Master. That's important. Seeker did 12.9. He's actually weak affinity here, so he would do a little more damage to pretty much any other affinity. Um, you've got Man-Eater, who's at 15.9, but then the other Man-Eater is at 19.7 because of that Fury set. So that helped him boost it by about 4 million damage. I've seen the spread bigger. I've seen it wider. And then Farrakhan the Fat himself, the damage dealer, 24.8 million. Those burns, the poisons, and I think he gets credit for all of the ally attacks as well. I'm not 100% sure, but I think he does. And so that's where all that damage came from. 85.23 million. That's pretty impressive. And again, definitely, at least from what this looks like, definitely go with lasting gifts over the one that gives you 5% extra chance to debuff. So there we go. I hope you've enjoyed this. Um, I hope this helps you get the Bat-Eater comp going and going better, faster, earlier in your account, or any 2-to-1 team. I would think as long as you can fit him in and you've got other people to keep you alive, do all that, I think he might be able to turn any 2-to-1 team into a 2-key ultimate nightmare, or possibly even a 1-key. assuming you can stay alive long enough. So anyway, good luck, Raiders. I hope this helped out a lot. Please subscribe to my channel if this was the type of thing that you like. Please do. It would really help me out a lot. Thanks.